This is the Bill Kelly Show on 900 CHML. You're watching on Cable 14. Been looking forward to this segment. Two of my favorite people joining us here in studio. The recent release of John Ellison's autobiography. It's called Some Kind of Wonderful, the John Ellison story. Chronicles an amazing life against almost insurmountable odds. And who better to tell it than I think one of our most gifted writers in this era, of course, John Wells, award-winning author, and of course you know John from his work with the Hamilton Spectator as well. And John Ellison, the incredible John Ellison, is also with us here in studio. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in here. It's great to have you both here today.
It's good to be here, Bill.
Thanks a lot, Bill.
We'll talk about the book in a couple of seconds, but I guess as I was just asking as we were just setting up here, John, of course, an awful lot of folks may know a little bit about John. We'll find an awful lot more through the course of the discussion here, and of course with the book. But how'd you guys hook up, John? I mean, you're a Hamilton guy. You know all about John Ellison, but actually, I'm always intrigued when I get a writer like your capabilities and talent to say, I think I'll do a book about John Ellison. How did that come about?
Well, I had written a long profile in the Spectator about John, and that had come about. Well, I had first quoted John in a piece several years ago. I wrote a story around Easter time about searching for God and spoke to some prominent Hamiltonians for their thoughts about where they find God. And it was recommended to me by my editor that I should try John Ellison. And so I got him on the phone, and we had a great phone interview, and he gave a very thoughtful response. And I thought, you know, I should do more on him. I should write a longer piece. And so I ended up doing a long profile on him.
That was 2-3 years ago, though, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And it was nominated for an award and so on. It was, just a fascinating life story. And I came to realize later on that I was just scratching the surface. You spend a few hours with someone like John at their home, and you feel like you really get in depth into their life and who they are, what they're all about. And certainly with this one, I was just scratching the surface. And John came to me with his agent Glenn later on. To say that John had written this manuscript for his life story, and would I help polish it up for publication, and I jumped at the opportunity.
John, you'd already had this idea that you wanted to tell your story. I remember having a discussion with Angelo Mosca a year or so ago when his book came out, Tell It to My Face, and of course our friend Steve Milton was the co-author that guided him through his autobiography. And Ange told me at the time, John, that he said, well, it's a story that I think needs to be told. Maybe somebody can learn something. Is that what was going through your head when you decided, I've got to put this down on paper, I've got to have this down for the ages?
Yeah, well, I started writing bits and pieces probably around 7 or 8 years ago because people would see me on stage, they see me in the neighborhood, they see me out. And once they find out that I'm the writer of Some Kind of Wonderful, and, I do all this touring, and they say, wow, you've had a great life. Your life is...
We have.
Yeah, I have had a great life. But that's all people would see is what was on the surface. And people had no idea or have no idea what I've gone through to get to where I am, and all the obstacles that were in my way, the racial things that I had to encounter. And so I wanted not only for the public to know, but also for my family to know exactly what hardships I've encountered.
You can almost, there's so many facets to this story that I find amazing. And people can say, well, yeah, musicians trying to make it to the top. There's always going to be some bumps along the road, and not everybody makes it. And I remember a couple of years ago when I met you in the hallway here when you were going to do a guest spot on one of our other stations there on vinyl.
Right.
And I just got back from Chicago, and I mentioned I was over at Buddy Guy's Club and everything. And you told me the story about the first time you tried to play Chicago.
Yeah.
And I guess you guys got as far as the bandstand, didn't you? Until somebody called you out on it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were actually being not that experienced as a musician, and we didn't realize we had to have these union cards.
Yeah, it's kind of a big thing for those guys.
So as soon as we walked on stage, in comes the guy from the union, and he says, "Okay, I want to see everybody's card."
And you guys were just kids.
Yeah, we were just. So
Man, I got to play Chicago. This is fabulous.
And so we looked at each other. We didn't even know what he was talking about. We said, "Cards? I mean, what cards?" So he said, "Do you guys belong to the union?" And we said, "No, we don't." So he said, "Well, pack up your things."
Pack it up. And that was your first Chicago experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there ever a time, John, and we'll talk some more about where you came from, of course, in the coal mines in West Virginia, when you look back at what you had and said, how did I ever get to here? The odds were so stacked against you back in those early days.
Well, it's funny. I never felt that the odds were against me, because with my frame of mind, and I've not just about music, but about anything that if somebody challenged me, said, you can't do this, you can't do this, I was always ready to prove them wrong. So long before the racism and all that, I was used to people trying to block me stop me from doing something for whatever reason. So
it's just been part of your life.
Exactly.
Your father was a coal miner.
Yeah.
As I'm reading I haven't read the book yet, but I read John's article, of course, from a couple of years ago that was in the spec. Growing up, your father was a coal miner. The expectation, I guess, was going to be that you were going to be a coal miner too. I'm sure that's what everybody thought.
Exactly.
But there was a change of direction there. Did you just automatically assume this, or were you looking for alternatives to this? And obviously, music became that alternative.
Well, as you know, Bill, well, when you're a kid and you see, first of all, I loved music. My father was a guitarist. He played guitar a lot, and on the weekends when he wasn't working. So the vision I had of musicians was, they were all rich, and they drove nice cars. They lived in beautiful homes, and where I was, and I wanted that, and so
sure.
That's so I had it in my head. One of these days, this is what I'm going to do. I remember I used to the house that we lived in was like up on a hill, and the highway. I would be looking down at the highway, and I'd see cars going by. We didn't have a car, and I wanted to. I don't know. I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I'd be looking at these cars. And I said, one of these days, I'm going to own a car. It's just I've always. I was never satisfied with just being poor. A lot of people accepted it, but I wanted more.
For some people, John, poor is an abstract term. You went down there, didn't you, when you were doing the book?
I didn't go down personally. I saw pictures of the place, and John talked in great detail about it.
And it's the abject poverty that John grew up in. I mean, anybody that saw Coal Miner's Daughter, the Sissy Spacek movie, and with Levon Helm and everybody, boy, I'm telling you, they're literally living in shacks, no running water.
That's right, and I think certainly one of the parts of the book that stands out, he talks about his father coming home from work, and Dad would get the first crack at the tub.
Yeah, exactly.
And the kids would follow after, and by the time it got to John's turn to have a bath in the tub, the water would be black because his father had dibs on the tub. And so I think you see in the book you have this this kid who has sort of the confidence of youth, and seeing what his father is living and dying from, really. And then you see this kid, young kid John Ellison, seeing Chuck Berry on TV being inspired by that, not just being entertained by it, but thinking, I want to do that, and I can do that. And from somewhere within him is this confidence that not only do I want that, I'm going to get that.
Well, I want to talk about how that happened and the steps, too. Let me do a short time out. We'll come back in a couple of minutes and get into that. The incredible John Ellison is with us. John Wells, the author of the book. It's called Some Kind of Wonderful. Back after this on The Bill Kelly Show. CHML, Cable 14. Welcome back. Bill Kelly Show, CHML Cable 14. That's Some Kind of Wonderful. And John Ellison, of course, the composer of that song and the author of this book, Some Kind of Wonderful, the John Ellison story, written along with John Wells. Both John Wells and John Ellison with us here in studio. The book available, it's on the market now, isn't it, John?
It is. It's available at Brian Prince and Epic on Lock Street and online at Amazon.com.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Brian Prince just over in Westdale, where I go buy my Steve Brunt books, so I have to pick all the stuff. Buy local. That's what we have to do, buy locally. And it's a fabulous story. We were just talking before the break, John, about poverty, and as we were saying, it's kind of relative. But, I mean, you hand-me-down clothes, shoes that were too big that your mom used to stuff newspaper in so that they'd fit, because they're... but you didn't accept that. I mean, you went to school. You saw that white kids got advantages that black kids never got.
Right.
You didn't accept that as status quo, though, did you?
No, I did not. And bear in mind, at the time when I was going to school, I didn't go to. It was a segregated school. I went to an all-black school. And. But
you saw how the others were living.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Talk to me. We were mentioning in the last segment about influences when you're growing up and the people that can have an impact on your life. Your dad played guitar, I guess, to try to relieve some of the stress of what he was doing in his job, too. Talk to me about a guy named Bobby Thomas who was around. He was a kind of a mentor to you?
Yeah, Bobby Thomas was he was probably 10 years older than I was, and he was very popular with the ladies. He was everybody loved the guy. He was very talented. He could sing, play guitar, and I had just started playing. So I every chance I got, like he would come by the house quite often, visit with my dad, and he would pick up the guitar and he would play, and I would watch his hands, make sure. And I didn't tell him I was watching. I just watched what he was doing, and next time he come around, I'd be playing what he was playing.
But you did that by sight and just by watching him,
and by listening. Yep.
And picking it up that way.
Exactly.
You mentioned that obviously as you're growing up. We were just talking about driving through those hills there in Virginia. At any given time, you're lucky if you hear one radio station. I mean, there's just because of the geography and topography of the area. But who were the people that you listened to and aspired to and said, I want to be like that?
I listened to the most. The artists that I listened to mostly were country artists and Elvis, because the radio stations, that's all they played was white music. Mm-hmm. So I grew up listening to Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis. These guys were especially Jerry Lee Lewis. I really I liked him a lot. And Roy Clark, he played banjo. And
he was a pretty good picker.
Yeah, he was. he was awesome. I liked watching his hands and how banjos always fascinated me, and so he was one of my favorite artists.
You mentioned Chuck Berry a little while ago too, and as John was mentioning, a lot of the black artists only got played on black radio, but there weren't that many black radio stations, were there?
No, and that's why I'm saying, and I'll get to that. In the area where I lived, there were no black radio stations, so the only music that you could listen to was country, or rock and roll, as it was called. And when I was introduced to Chuck Berry, it was on the Dick Clark Show. I saw him on the Dick Clark Show.
On American Bandstand.
Yeah, and his style of music, his style of playing, You know, he was just a cool cat to me. And I said,
And his showmanship, I think, which you
exactly.
certainly took on that in your career, right?
Exactly.
The stage presence,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
For a long time, I copied his like everything that I did. It was.
Did you do the duck? You do the duck
I
walk?
was doing the duck walk.
You're kidding.
Oh yeah. Yep.
But and you just mentioned, I mean, with Jerry Lee Lewis or with Little Richard, people like that. I mean, there's a flamboyance to their presence on stage too, wasn't there? And that's obviously something that you thought, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you finally decide I'm leaving Virginia? I'm taking my guitar and I'm going to make it. I'm going to go for it.
Well, the more I practiced, and obviously I got better and better, and I knew that I could earn a living playing music. I was certain of that, and
well, you had some reaffirmations of that. I know you did some shows, for instance, at the Coal Miners Hall and some local stuff.
Right.
You probably should have won a talent contest. I know that story's outlined in the book where, because somebody left a mic on and you heard the judges actually talking about the fact that you should have been given first place.
Yeah, that's when I knew that I was good, and that's why I entered that contest, and not thinking anything about color. I was just going on the pure fact that I was good, and that I was going to be better than any of the other contestants, and. To my amazement, when I entered the contest and I knew I won, one of the judges, he commented, he said, "Who can be better than this? We have a winner." And when I walked out of the room where I was performing, and the intercom was left on, and one of the judges said, "What do you mean we got a winner?" And the guy said, "Well, who can be better than that?" And he says, "I don't care how good he is. He's a nigger. And there's no way we're going to let a nigger win this contest." And everybody in that room heard it. And I mean, it was like somebody stabbed me in the back with a knife. I can't even explain the hurt that I felt at that moment. But
some people, John, would have just said, "Well, that's it. That's just too big a barrier to cross." That's not how you reacted.
No,
though.
Because what it did for me, I shed a few tears, but it made me angry, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to show you. No one is going to stop me. I'll be back, and you might have stopped me now, but you can't stop me."
You've, in this fabulous career of yours, played some of the big houses. I mean, we talked about you getting shoved off the stage in Chicago until you got your union card. You've been back to Chicago many times. There have been other places. The Apollo comes to mind, and some great gigs like this, too. I want to talk about that when we come back after a short time out. Okay. It's all in the book, gang. The book is called Some Kind of Wonderful by John Ellison with John Wells. And we'll talk more about some of this incredible story right after this time out. This is The Bill Kelly Show on CHML and Cable 14.
Well, it sounds so sweet. I had to take me a chance. Rose out of my seat. I just had to dance. Started moving my feet. Oh, to clapping my hands. Can't you be true? Oh, Maybelline, why can't you be true? You done started doing the things you used to do. As I was motivating over the hill, I saw Maybelline in a coupe de ville. A Cadillac rolling on an open road, nothing out to run my V8
Hey, welcome back. Having a ball today talking with John Ellison. And the incredible John Ellison, of course, and his book is called Some Kind of Wonderful. Written with John Wells, authors of a number of fabulous songs, books. This is available right now, by the way, in better bookstores, and it's Greening Press, right? Look for it, Some Kind of Wonderful, John Ellison. And I got to get to the point, John, about the song that obviously you used as the title of your autobiography. And the one that I guess finally put that car in the driveway that you always wanted. Talk to me about. Well, actually, before I ask you about the song, how about a few chords of the song that is actually won awards now. This is one of the most recorded songs in rock music history. Over 50 artists, last time I counted, over 50 artists have covered this song.
It's about 62
Is
now.
it? See, it keeps going up.
Yeah.
It's probably 63 by the time you finish saying that.
Right.
Give us a little bit of it.
I don't need a whole lot of money. I don't need a big fine car. I got everything that a man could want. I got more than I could ask for. I don't have to run around. I don't have to stay out all night. 'Cause I got me a sweet loving woman. And she knows just how to treat me right. Now my baby, she's alright. Now my baby, she's out of sight. Don't you know that she's some kind of wonderful? Yes, she is. She's some kind of wonderful. Yes, she is.
Wow.
Nice.
Fabulous. John Wells, as you were mentioning, I mean, the first time you heard this, you thought, hey, what a great cover version. With all due respect to Mark Farner and Grand Funk, boy, this is the version.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I saw him played at an awards show, the Holland Awards, and I thought, wow, that guy does a really good version of
that Grand Funk hit.
The Grand Funk hit. And then, when I was researching John, I looked up the Soul Brothers 6 original that John wrote and performed.
And it's great. Yeah, as great as what we just heard here. The boy, to hear the record.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, and even just hear him here, I mean, it's. He makes it look easy. He makes it look like anyone could do that, and people can't do that.
How'd you? The song is, as the story goes, I guess you wrote this on the back of an envelope or back of a paper bag or something.
Yeah, I was en route from Rochester, New York. We were going to Philadelphia. We had a manager that we had met in Rochester, and he lived in Philly, and he sent for us. And the night before we were leaving, I called this young lady up that I'd been seeing, and her asked if she. If we could, spend some time together. And the next morning, I told her she was some kind of wonderful.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Exactly.
All right. When you recorded the song,
right?
Did you think, hey, we got something here?
Well, I knew before we recorded it. I knew when I was writing it that it was a hit. And when we arrived in Philadelphia, and the guy, told the guys I had this song that I wanted them to listen to, and I told the bass player how I wanted the bass line to go, the drummer how I wanted it to go, and the backup vocals, and we started playing.
So you basically produced it. I mean, you said this is the sound I want.
Yeah, I wrote it, I arranged it, and then while we were playing, a friend of the guy that was managing us, he came over to meet us, and he was a DJ, and he heard the song, and he said, "Whose song is that?" And I said, "It's mine." He said, "That's a hit." And he said, "We need to record this."
And you did, but
Yep.
then you had this obstacle that you were talking about earlier, John. Black artists didn't get played on the radio.
Well, we were played on black radio stations.
Yeah.
Every black radio station in the U.S. played the song, and the station that I mentioned, WLAC in Nashville, Tennessee, they played black music. They also played white music too,
Yeah.
but they played black music late at night. And when a black artist recorded a song, whatever label he was on, that record went out to all black radio stations. They didn't even send them out to any other radio station.
Yeah, there's the Stax label and a couple of others that featured almost exclusively black artists.
Right, exactly. And so not thinking anything of it, all I was thinking, we had a hit song, and all the hard times were over. This was it.
What was it like? I mean, for a guy like yourself, you write the song. You guys have been doing some stuff on the road for a while, but it's got to be a special feeling that first time you heard the song on the radio.
Oh, it was can't even explain it. It was, to hear that first time, to hear that song, and when we arrived in Philadelphia, you heard it every hour on the hour. all day long. That's all you could hear was Some Kind of Wonderful, and it was climbing the charts. And I mean, we weren't even ready for everything that came along. And you know, with TV appearances, being on shows with all these different artists, Smokey Robinson, Temptations. I mean, you name them, we were there. We did shows. Patti LaBelle was opening for us. I mean, it was amazing. And but we weren't making any money. And at the time, it really didn't. I mean, for me, it didn't matter. I wasn't married. I was single, you know, and I was living the dream. You know, girls screaming and traveling, you know, being on TV. Can't walk down the street without being recognized.
That's got to feel kind of neat.
It was a
and you're playing all these places that are just dreams to so many other people.
Exactly.
You know, the big halls. You did the Apollo in Harlem.
We did the Apollo. We did a huge concert in Philadelphia. It was called at the Spectrum.
Yeah, the big arena there.
The big arena. We played there. We played another place. It was an outdoor festival called the Robin Hood Dell. They even gave us the key to the city. They called it giving. You know, we received the key to the city because of our performance. So we were really we made an impact in Washington D.C. We went back to Chicago. I mean, we were all over the place.
You've played with some of the greats,
Right.
Or maybe I should rephrase that. Some of the greats have played with you, but you've been on the bill with. You mentioned Patti LaBelle and Smokey Robinson and the Temptations, and the greats were coming to see you. You were telling me the story about how Jackie Wilson and who was there?
Frankie Lyman.
Frankie Lyman, the teenagers, of course. Why Do Fools Fall in Love?
Yeah.
Actually came to see you guys play at the Apollo.
Exactly.
On what I guess turned out to be the last night of his life.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly,
Frankie
yeah.
died of an overdose. I guess that next morning he was discovered.
Exactly that.
Terrible tragedy. And as with all good things, you know, the Soul Brothers Six, as it turned out, eventually broke up.
Right.
But you decided to keep going, to maintain as a solo artist. How hard a decision was that to make?
Well, what we did was after the group broke up, and it was because of bad management and you know, people taking advantage of us.
There's a lot of that going around in those days, wasn't it? I mean,
was.
just sign here, guys, sign here. And of course, this is your shot at stardom, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't read the fine print. You just figure, I'll
Exactly.
trust these guys.
Yep.
A lot of guys in the business got burned.
A lot. I was talking with Sam and Dave. Sam has a similar story to mine. You know, so anyway, when the group disbanded, I decided to form another group, call them the Soul Brothers Six. And I was the only original member of the group, the only member of the original group.
Mm-hmm.
And we were great. We came to Canada, and we started performing in Canada. I couldn't get agents, the same agents that were booking the original group, because we were not the original group. They wouldn't book us. So we went back to playing in clubs and. As they called it at that time, it was called the Chitlin Circuit, and which meant all black clubs, and so we were playing, just basically making enough money to get from one club to the next club, and it was tough.
It's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah, it was.
How did you settle on Hamilton? How did you settle in Southern Ontario? It's a long road from the hills of Virginia to Hamilton.
Yeah, well. The way I came to Canada, I first performed in 1967 when my song was really at its peak.
Yeah.
And it was being played a lot on a station called CKLW.
Out of Windsor.
Out of Windsor.
Which was really, it's a Windsor radio station, but it really it really programmed to the Detroit audience.
Exactly.
It was literally right across the river.
Yep.
And it was one of the biggest stations in North America. If you got played on, it's called the Big 8. It was 800. It's a new stock station now. Nothing wrong with that. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But back in those days, if you got played on CKLW, you were big.
Right, exactly. So we were playing on. They were playing it on CKLW, and an agent in London, Ontario, contacted my manager and said they would like for us to do a concert in London. So we came to London, Ontario. It was my first trip to Canada, and we did we brought it was about 5 different acts. And it was a great show. We had great turnout, and it was the first time in Canada. And I was thinking, wow, what a beautiful country. And at the time, I never even dreamed that I would be living here. So we performed. We were here for two nights. Then I went back to Philly, and years later, I got booked. About 4 years later, I was booked in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Halifax, another agent booked me in Ottawa, and then another one booked me in St. Catharines. And when I went to St. Catharines, I met an agent from Hamilton. His name was Harold Cutlett, the Harold Cutlett Agency. And they were one of the largest booking agencies in Canada at the time. And he came to see me, and he said he would like to represent me in Canada. And the money that he was talking was, good money.
Yeah.
And plenty of work. So I ended up performing in Canada basically almost 50 weeks out of the year. And so I figured, well, I might as well move here. And the son of the agent lived in Dundas. And he mentioned that, a lot of houses were being built in the area and in Hamilton, and I should, take a look at some of the places and
well, it's our gain, I got to tell you. Let me do a short time out, and then we'll have a few more minutes to talk again. The book is called Some Kind of Wonderful. The John Ellison Story. John Ellison with John Wells with us here in studio. This is The Bill Kelly Show on CHML at Cable 4. Welcome back. Bill Kelly Show, CHML Cable 14. A few more minutes with John Ellison and John Wells, co-author of the book. It's called Some Kind of Wonderful. And, of course, the big hit. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that the Some Kind of Wonderful, of course, has been obviously the driving part of your career. But you've written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs and recorded by other folks. You're just talking about, the theme Carlito's Way. Other people have picked up your stuff as well. But Some Kind of Wonderful is, as you mentioned, something special. And you mentioned BMI. For our listeners out there, BMI actually is Broadcast Music Incorporated, and it tracks the music that gets played and recorded and performed. Exactly. So guys like you that write these fabulous hits can get compensated for it properly. Now, you got an award from these guys just a little while ago. Some Kind of Wonderful, is it the second most recorded song of all time?
No, in June 25th of last year, I received an award from BMI. It's the 3rd most played song in the world, and it's been played on the radio now over 4 million times.
It may be second by now, because that's outdated information. Because
exactly.
People keep recording it. Like I say, I saw a press release, John, that said 50, and you say it's up to about 62 different artists now.
62, yeah.
And then it runs the gamut. I mean, we talked about Grand Funk, of course, because that was such a huge hit for those guys. But Carole King's recorded this. Michael Bublé's recorded this. I mean, what they may call easy listening artists, rock artists, R&B artists. I mean, everybody has picked up on this song.
Yeah, it's. When I wrote it, I knew it was a hit. But if someone had told me that this song would be recorded over and over and over by different artists, I couldn't fathom that. I never would have believed it.
It's like you say, living the dream. It's just fabulous,
exactly.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving too. How long did it take to write the song?
About maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Best 15 minutes, the best investment you've made, I guess,
exactly.
isn't it?
And people say to me, they said, you've only written that one song. I said, well, no, I've written a lot more songs, and they said, just that one song. I said, well, keep in mind that you only need to hit the lottery once. That's right.
And Bill, I think one of the interesting things about the song as well is the title of the book, and the song is as upbeat, as a song as you could have.
Yeah.
That's why it's so beloved. I think it's played at weddings and all that. And yet his story it has so many ups and downs and challenges through the book, and there's dark periods in his life that he's overcome. So there's that neat double meaning, I think, to the title. You know, I mean, his whole life hasn't been wonderful all the time,
Nope.
but he's always has found the wonderful parts in it in terms of his wife and his family and
Well,
and,
that's,
and his
and
faith.
you touched on that. We didn't even mention Margaret, and that's we could spend another hour talking about that. Your story, John, is almost the personification of the civil rights movement. I mean, you overcame a great deal of bias and hatred, even in your own hometown, and rose above that.
Oh, yeah.
You met Margaret, and that brought with it its own societal concerns. Here you were.
Yeah.
It was the 1960s, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And black people weren't supposed to marry white people in,
Nope.
in those days.
Exactly.
And again, you just said, well, that's not the rule I'm going to follow.
Right. You know, people said my friends, my relatives, my family, my mom, everybody said I was crazy. You know, and I've always been like this. You know, I don't see color. You know, when I look at a person, I just see the person. There's only two types of people in my world, and they're either good or bad. And I'm not going to let anyone dictate how I should live my life and who I should be with. So my wife and I, we went to West Virginia, which is definitely a place that was segregated. I mean, when I lived in West Virginia, I couldn't even go in a restaurant. I
know we don't have a whole lot of time to tell that story, but I mean, you didn't even get a whole lot of support from your family when you brought Margaret down there.
No, not at all. No.
And that's why a big part of the book is a love story.
Yeah.
Frankly,
Yeah.
And that's with John and his mother is
Yeah.
one of the threads, and John and Margaret.
Yeah,
it's
my mother.
it's a love story.
My mother said to me, you know, you can't bring her in this house. And I said, well, if I can't, you just lost your son. You know, that's the way I believe. You know,
I read the book is the best advice I can give you. Read the book. It's a fascinating story, and it is available in bookstores right now. Some Kind of Wonderful, the John Ellison story. John Ellison with the incredible John Wells, of course, as a co-author on this. It's Greening Press, and I'm going to go pick up my copy as soon as I get off the air here. I'm heading back up to Chapters, and I'll do that. Oh, I'll go to Brian Prince. We'll do it local. You're absolutely right. Thank you, guys, for being here, and congratulations on a great career so far, John, because you're nowhere
Thank
near
you.
finished.
No.
They're
I'm
going to
just
keep
getting
dragging you back
started.
on stage, man. All right.
That's right.
It's funny. We were at a show, one of those summer concerts at Gage Park Band Show last summer with our family, and the band was playing Some Kind of Wonderful. I said, the guy who wrote that just lives around the block, just a few blocks. You're kidding us? Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you the story. Well, now I don't have to. I'll buy them the book instead.
There you go.
John Ellison, John Wells, thanks so much for this, guys.
Bill, it's
Thanks,
been a
Bill.
pleasure.
We got to run. News coming up in a couple of minutes. Scott's still away. Matt Holmes will be in after 12 o'clock. Thank you, Samantha Payne, and thanks to you for letting us be part of your morning. Back at you tomorrow, The Bill Kelly Show on CHML and Cable 14.
Let the winter come on, I think I'll try